How long did you have your baby? Holy cow. That's not bouncing back.
My sister's like that. She comes out looking like she never had a baby.
Right.
Four
Be
children.
careful, the thing is on.
It's off.
Oh, okay.
Yours is on.
It is the top of the hour on October 15th, 2019, and the Billerica Historical Preservation Commission meeting is now in session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion to accept the agenda for this evening?
I motion to accept the agenda.
All in favor? Unanimous, okay. The minutes are in front of you, and believe it or not, even with our wonderful Kirsten, she managed to get them all out to us. And Thanksgiving was written. Thank you, yes, okay. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Okay, motion second to accept minutes. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, we don't have anybody in the audience apparently for public comment, and that's fine. I do know that we have people who are watching. I was expecting a few more running who promised that they would be here for whatever reasons, which we won't get into. However, the reports of officers and board minutes. I am so excited tonight. First of all, I want to remind everyone that Historic Preservation Commission meetings, as you all know, do not have to necessarily be held because we happen to have something to approve. We are, in effect, an educational commission as well, just like many of the others. And I would like to go on record, first of all, of thanking everybody in the city manager, Bobby, and all of the others who allowed all of us to go to the conference, the state conference last month. I think that it was an important conference, and after I've been through so many of the webinars and to other conferences and regional, and thinking about it, I realized that this one was a little bit unique in having 3 tracks because it was just HPC and not a conglomeration of all the others as we've been to before. So we were able to divide and conquer and go to several of the meetings. I'm grateful for the fact that we were all given a registration and room. I'm also honored that I did absolutely receive one of the 4 scholarships given in the state, so that my registration was reimbursed to the city. But it's not just because of me. I would encourage other people to, now that you've been to them, to also apply if they do it again. But to represent the city, and my responses on the questionnaire had to do with all of you. So I gave credit to all the commissioners for all the help and the fact that we worked together as a team. So thank you. One of the things that I got today from Paul Jarrett, who some of you have met, who happens to be the head of the Three River Division, and he knows that we have been looking forever. Ron has been looking for a copy of what we had when the north side of Billerica was designated as a national site, historic site. We have looked all over for them. I've contacted a man who used to be here, but I talked to Paul and he said, you know what, I think I can find it. And so just this morning, he emailed me a copy of what was turned in to make the north side of Main Street a National Historic Site. What I also know is that you cannot have a National Historic Site without having a local historical site. They all go hand in hand. Well, as you know, we've been talking about trying to make the south side historical. And we were looking and looking and looking for something. I, before I left, emailed each one of you a copy of what he sent me. And I also printed it out. I will tell you there are 35 pages to it. but I thought you might want to take a look closely before you take a look at what you have online, because according to Paul and according to the state attorneys that I talked to when we were in Rome, if we follow this guideline, it does not have to be an essay. And I was under the impression that we had to write essay type of thing for this, and that's not the case. And so looking at this, yes, Paul and others have said we can follow this. So when Ryan gets back, we're going to be able to, I think, use this to make sure we've got the South Side listed as a local and national historic site. The reason that that's important, and for those of you who may be watching and listening to us, we have no jurisdiction over the South Side if somebody wants to do something until we declare it as a historic site. That could be disastrous for a number of reasons, which I will go into later. But I would like for you, just kind of take a look and see what's in there, the pictures. Yes, there's a narrative on some of them, but the South Side is not as large as the North Side, and I think that that should be our first priority in doing that. The other thing I want to announce before I forget is that Ron Johnson is in LaGrange tonight. I tried to see if I could go to a dinner tomorrow night with Tom and Janet's permission, since they're all going together, but I was too late in asking because it closed. Why did I want to go to the dinner? Again, because of Ron and because of all of you. The ordinances that he wrote and using what we had and adding to it and bringing them all up to date has been selected by the state as a model. And so that's what he is doing. And here we are, a little over like a model for everyone else with our ordinances. And so, if Ron were here, we could give him an applause or something. But he and Janet are at a meeting in LaGrange tonight as well. And I'm sorry that I or any one of us could not go to support him. But he did a great job. And I think thanking all of you, because when he brought him here, we certainly gave him a hard time, asking for clarification and checking on grammar and what have you. So I feel like it's part of all of this. And thank all of you for doing that as well. Okay, any other comments before I get into our conference? And a funny part of it, just for the record, Kim and David, and David's wife, did not climb 119 stairs up the clock tower in Rome, but I did.
Just for the record, thank you.
Wimp.
Immediately went over and found a chair and sat down.
I really
showed
felt, well, and if you've ever been in castles and things, it's a winding thing with one staircase, and they're open staircases. So I was able to hold on with my right hand and go up forward. But coming back, I had to hold on and go sideways down, and anybody going up had to come underneath my arms so that they could get through. But anyway, I've got pictures to prove that I was up there.
And for the record, I did review the pictures and the video from the top. Thank you, Dr. Mims.
You're welcome. Anyway, one of the things that I wanted to do tonight, obviously we don't have anybody applying for anything, and that would be the reason for Ron to be here. But as I said, we are also educational. And I would like for each one of you to share something that you felt was important and that you can take away from there that was there. But I want to share one of the things that I think was not only awe-inspiring and educational, but we have the keynote speaker who spoke on Thursday morning, and his book is called Why Old Things Matter. I downloaded it, I recorded his speech, and believe it or not, for a keynote speaker to speak for almost an hour and then have questions and answers afterwards, you know that he had to be really good to catch everybody's attention. No one left early. He told us so many things, but if you get a chance to get that book, I suggest that you get a hold of it if possible. It's on Amazon. I downloaded it to my e-reader. But one of the things that he dwelt on, just a part of the book, about why old places matter, not things but places, and he gave us 11 reasons. And so I would just kind of briefly like to talk about why I think they're important. The first one was continuity. And what he said was that continuity deals with the past, the present, and the future. And he said a reunion provides for people a sense of continuity. And I'm thinking about what we did back in March with our symposium, what was called Past, Present, and Future, where we tried to bring them all together. And that shows continuity not only for us as individuals, but for the whole city. The second reason is memory, because he said memories can be touched, whether they're both individual or community. And yeah, how many of us have grown up in places where you remember, I remember going here, I remember going there, and then all of a sudden the places are not there anymore, or they don't look as big as they did. I mean, there's something unique about that. So the memory is something that touches all of our senses. The third reason was individual identity. And he said individual identity can be robbed by sheer destruction of places and even the progress of urbanization, because we don't have that sense of community and why an old place may be important. So while we do want to have growth, we do want to preserve those as well. The fourth reason was civic identity. And that's not just local and state, but national and international as well. The man in his presentation gave us pictures of international places that he went to. He also happened to be in his credentials on the Historic Preservation Board in another country that oversaw everything internationally. So he had a chance to talk about the pyramids, about older buildings in France and in Italy and what have you. It was really an exciting presentation. And what he said within that civic identity is the beauty that we forget about buildings. He said there are many pictures of old places, but some of them are forgotten. And he said we do forget that new things can also be beautiful in a community. For example, we do have Victorian houses here. We have some Art Deco. Maybe not as much as you have in other places, but we do have some things that I think are beautiful, including my Ballywig, that baptismal font, where we find out there's only 2 in the whole state of Georgia, and a hole in the ground and cement stairs. But to me, it's beautiful because in my own mind, I'm thinking about what it might have been like to see people going down the stairs and being baptized in total immersion. There's a lot of cute, cool things there. So we do have that. And besides the beauty that we've lost, I'm not sure about the people who may be listening or understand us. I know that everybody on this commission probably is aware of all the Indian trails that we have. One of them, about 400 yards from where Commissioner Wright lives, between the church and Spring Street, as a whole Indian trail in there. And if you're able to walk down there and see the beauty of that landscape, it's totally untouched, but part of our heritage. So old places can become more beautiful, and new places are going to become as beautiful, given other types of variables. The fifth reason was history and learning. And he said that these are experiences that also touch our senses. For example, architecture. Architecture is a cultural heritage. It has proportion and balance. And many of you who have taken art classes know that our professor used to say form follows function. And so we're looking at the architectural value of all of that as well. A sixth reason is sacredness. Wow. I didn't think about that as being why it necessarily mattered until he touched on the idea of not only churches, but battlefields. And so we take a look at our city here in Billerica, and we realize the heritage of not only the Indians who were here and helped build hospitals and Stone Mountain and what have you, but we also have many of our citizens and Indians and other people of color who fought in the wars, not only the Civil War, the War of 1812, and their cemeteries, their graveyards are in the cemeteries that we just a few months ago declared as something historic. And so that's important. We also have the First Presbyterian Church that we declared because of that history as being a wooden church built, covered up, but having part of it visible for us to see. So that's another reason why old places matter. And then creativity. He gave us a lot of reasons why old things create creativity. The by looking at them, they stir us and want to do that. He said the real history is key. So when you're looking at something and you want to build something, what is it that you're looking at? Are you looking at the old buildings? Are you looking at the history of that particular area and wanting to duplicate it or bring it forward, but still with a sense of history? The ninth one was community landmarks, and we certainly have many of them right now. They're both civil and individual. Believe it or not, a landmark can be a grave. And we have so many of them here in Villa Rica. But historic places are also where people gather for the community. What better example do we have than our Taste of Villa Rica last Saturday, when we had thousands of people coming, when we had many of the places by the mill and that whole site as being a gathering place, but it's also a historic place because although it's been destroyed, where the Welcome Center is now in the Avanti building, behind there was one of 3 or 4 cotton gins because of the areas of the cotton fields. And although I don't live in a historic home like 3 of you do here, I live in a historic area because once gold left, where I lived was with the Daniels and the Stoddards and Edge and Claghorns all had cotton fields that sustained the city of Villa Rica. So that's a place where all of us gather, and it's a sense of community that makes it important. The 10th one was sustainability. And he said that sustainability is important, particularly for people perhaps like Commissioner Wright, who does restoration. Because, and what we approved of over a year ago with the house on Main Street, the Victorian home, is trying to use existing materials to reuse them, to keep them in there, because the greatest building, he said, is the one that's already built, even if it has to be restored. And the last one, other than his summary, was economics. Well, I never thought about that either. But our world, he says, is committed to resurfacing, and that when you have people who are trying to restore places, it means that we are adding places that are attractive to tourists. It means that the economy grows, and that it puts people to work who would not have had a place to work by doing all that restoration. So he said rehab is a labor that stays within the community. And so that was his 11th reason for why old places matter. And I thought that was really powerful, because all of the other things that we attended, I think, and after now my term is over, all of you will have a chance, but I think that all of those 11 reasons were part and parcel of some of the other sections that we were allowed to go to and take part in. So we have a volunteer. Shall I start with Kim?
I volunteer. I really enjoyed the conference, learned a lot from it.
Is your mic on?
Sorry. I really enjoyed the conference. I learned a lot from it. There was a plaster demonstration that we all went to that was very good. Renee went to a different event after that, the first night. It was a reception at one of the homes. And I'm sorry I missed out on that. I really would have liked to have gone. But yes, there was a lot to have been learned, and I will absolutely do my very best to go to the next one and the next one and the next one.
I'll go next. So yes, the plaster demonstration was amazing. Learned a lot from my own home. And the tour that I went on, I can't remember the name of the home, but it was absolutely stunning. The gentleman that owned it did an amazing job of restoring it and furnishing it. It was gorgeous. But I wasn't prepared for this. I would have looked up the guy's name, but we all sat in on the class where the guy was talking about different homes. What was that? Not the first one that we went to, but
Architecture.
yes. But he said something that it struck me as interesting, because before and I'll tell you what he said in a minute, but before I was very much a what's the word I'm looking for? Purist, I guess, wanting to everything to go back to its original, you know. And for my own home, well, I'll tell you what he said was that every change is a portion of history, right? So if a building was changed in 1950, that change is now historic itself because it's older than 50 years old, and it tells a story. And so for me, I related that to my own home, which in the 1930s, the back porch was closed in and is now bathrooms, which it didn't have bathrooms originally, and it's now a third bedroom. And so I kind of related that to my own home of, yeah, that's a story where my great-grandparents needed an extra bedroom and they needed indoor plumbing. So, so yeah, that's a part of the story and the history of my home. And so I found that to be very interesting and very much what we have here on Main Street and many homes in the city. There have been changes, and those do tell a story of our town and of history itself. So he kind of changed my mind on that a little bit, just a little bit.
Thank you.
I think you could take away from anything that we saw. My favorite thing was the architecture too.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it depends, history is relative, I guess, to what person you're talking to about it. So, the buildings that he showed, where, you know, the adding and the bathrooms and the so forth, I take away that when someone says, hey, like us, we have, I think, our civic duty to protect that. But at what point is that? You know, are you protecting 1950, 1800, 1875? Which part that was built, you know? So it kind of puts that in perspective, like she says, to it's actually every bit of all the above is
Yeah.
what you're protecting. I think it's puts fuel to my fire to help the community that much further, to make sure that, you know, we protect what we have here already. That's kind of what I took away from it.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole conference was excellent. All the things that we attended, we could take something away from. The keynote speaker of Why Old Places Matter was striking, and it was very moving. And I also ordered the book. One thing that I really enjoyed was the Steel Rails and Iron Horses, which was an overview of Georgia statewide railroad context, and that was very comprehensive. I guess the engineering firm that did the presentation or that did the study, I'm not sure, had, I mean, from when the nation had reliance on the rails, and how some places still do have the short rails, and, you know, Villa Rica, we have the rail running through here, and I thought that was very enlightening on, you know, the expansion. I mean, now what we see is trucks and an occasional freighter going by. So to put that in perspective was really good. Probably one of the most moving, other than the keynote speaker of Why Old Places Matter, and this really ties into that, was the Partnering for Preservation Saving Zuber Cemetery. I thought that was a very enlightening and very good presentation, and it really struck me because the two presenters, Beverly Boone Meek and Ellen Waters Sullivan, actually had a relationship that they discovered through the preservation effort. This is a descendant of a slave cemetery, which was slated to be ruined, blocked off by property owners, you know, things that shouldn't be going on, and that was brought to light and brought to preservation. And their story was very touching because they had a relationship through the history and through the time.
Yes. And the fact that they were all there with their descendant, I mean, as a descendant of the slave, one, the other one who family was actually the owner of parts of it, so they were able to come together and preserve it.
Exactly.
Was awesome. That really was. And I think the other, when the architecture one, I find myself now going through, because I don't remember if it was on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, or not Friday, but I guess it was either Wednesday or Thursday. Maybe the architecture one where we learned the difference between different colors of brick and the yellow brick.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at, because what they did is they gave us pictures of the original, and then pictures of what it looks like now after it's been restored or redone. And then we had to figure out what was different, whether it was the shape of the window, on different levels, something missing, blocked in, and why yellow brick was so important. And now I'm finding myself running around Billerica, particularly when we were handing out posters and stuff, looking at all these buildings that have been restored. Is there a change in color in the brick? Did they use any yellow brick? Where did that yellow brick come from if they used it? It was really an enlightening thing that I think will add to our knowledge and to allowing us to make honest and fair decisions when someone comes to us asking for permission to have a certificate of approval. That we now have a stronger base in doing that. And so I am thankful again that we were all able to go. Is it?
I've got one more
Unfortunately,
quick.
we have Alan who took off on Thursday morning to go to Paris with his family to celebrate a graduation. But nevertheless, I'm sure you found things there you probably were looking at because of it. Renee was busy with DAR, which is also historic. So we had everybody else there for the rest of the 3 days, David and Kim and myself, and we learned a lot. I shared some of it with Janet Shumley yesterday in a meeting I had with her for possibilities for that, what they call the chariot rides.
Yes.
Believe it or not, they have golf carts, just like we have, that are holding 6 people. And basically they're free, sort of, because you don't pay for it. But because parking, of course, Rome is more concentrated, yes. And they don't have parking, but we don't either. And so you give a tip. And they actually have cards. And we called to go to the banquet on Thursday night that was at the clock tower, because the desk told us that we could call. So I called and I said, we'd like to have a chariot ride at 5:30 to the clock tower. He said, I'll be there. By golly, at 5:30, that golf cart driver was right there on time. We have David and his wife and me and Kim, and we're all in the golf cart. And people are giving them tips, whatever you want. If it's $1, $2, $5, whatever. And I said, what do we do when we come back? And he said, just send me a text and say, come get me, and I'll know it's you. But you see them riding all over town. And they're not all day long. They're only in the evening. Many of them are sponsored by the hotels. But if you have some event going on in your city, how awesome is that? To have these golf carts taking people around, because you don't have to park your car or find a place to park the car. They were really, really cool. You know who the first person was who used it? Kim. She actually, you got glasses or something? And he actually had to he even waited for her to go in the store and get them and come back. So we had a lot of really neat things. And one last thing for those of us who were able to take the boat tour, which the city had to pay for before we left, was really kind of cool. It took a little over 2 hours. On the return trip, our captain said that we were going to have a visitor, and he went into a back room on this tour boat, and there were about maybe 40 people total that could be on this. And he comes out dressed as Popeye the Sailor Man. And we had this saying, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, but he had his muscles and his hat and his pipe and his can of spinach. Why? Because we learned that he was the developer of the character Popeye, not the comic strip. But he lived in Rome, and he was also a steamboat captain. And so we learned on the tour about the steamboats that were in that particular area at the time. And that was kind of a cool, fun thing to do. So that's how we ended our trip. But I think that I wanted everyone listening or even to watch the video or streaming video of this meeting know how grateful we are as a commission for being able to attend a really awesome conference. As I said, better than a regional one, which regional is good, but being able to see only HPC, when last year we were at Chateau Elan, but it was everybody. It was planning and zoning and everybody else, so we only had a day. But this was an awesome thing with 3 tracks. And so thank you, Kirsten, for helping with our reservations and doing all of those. And now I guess the last thing we have to do is for pictures, because I understand that not only do they want a group picture for the grant that Ryan was doing, but that individual pictures could be put on the new website under each of our names as we are in for historical preservation. Oh, I do have one more announcement. A week ago last Friday, Chris asked me to meet with him about a grant that had to be turned in by the 10th of October. So I sat down with him and went over his idea for his grant, which had to be turned in. And I want you to know that his idea for the grant, which I totally approved of on behalf of all of you, is that in the welcome station, and he has a picture of, Butterball, but he also took and managed to get the cost, $3,500 in this one place for pictures, windows. They were in another place. But he actually then superimposed our historic sites that we approved of to be in a window where you can look out, but they were looking at, when people come to the welcome station, they would be looking at those historic sites. And the grant was, I think, for $2,000, but then matching by the city, which would more than cover that once we get to the welcome station and do all of that. And so I said, yeah, that's a really neat idea, something else to think about. Then we got to talking about the Second Citizen Symposium, which has nothing to do with HPC. I mean, this is my volunteer to do this because of my passion for wanting people to know more about Billerica. On the other hand, we talked about academies, and I said, yeah, some of us have been to the Billerica Police Academy, which is 8 weeks. We got free food, and we didn't have to pay for it. So he pulled up something where he had been, where they had a Citizen Academy. And so we do have our Second Citizen Symposium on November 20th at Powell Park. However, I'm going to be speaking to Mr. Barber and to some of the others because I think that it is a better idea to have a Billerica Citizen Academy. We have it for 5 weeks and no cost, but I'm sure that we can get people to donate food so they can come like we did for the Police Academy, maybe at 4:30, to have dinner first for half an hour, and then have the academy. And for 5 separate occasions, 5 different weeks, we have different people in town, different boards, different commissions, different departments within the city talking about what they're doing. And that way, if we hold it to 50 people and make it exclusive and do it 2 or 3 times a year, at least twice a year, we've got those 50 people each time talking to other people. So that it's like we say in education, each one teach one. So we've got each one talking more about our wonderful, unique find here in Billerica. That's all I have to say.
I randomly thought of something at the commission that was the conference that was really awesome. And I just wanted to remind you the house that had 12 different windows because the owner of the house was a window manufacturer. And that was still historically accurate and proper.
And one thing I'll add is the ability to communicate and share ideas with other historical preservation commissions that were there and in other governments, and that was invaluable to be able to share some of the solutions, share some of the problems and challenges, and come up with some ideas to move forward.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.